For very quick background, my younger brother is number 13 on the Patriots. He's a wide receiver. His name's Mack Hollins. You've either seen him banging bottles together, screaming Warriors, or you've seen him wearing no shoes.
East Coast boy, ends up in Stanford. How did you end up on the West Coast?
And so really, was forced at Stanford to just kind of venture in different directions and kind of explore, and really just started to learn capital markets, got really fascinated with how money moves and how assets are allocated across a portfolio. And so went to Goldman Sachs with the perspective of being a CIO. My goal was to be a CIO someday. I think the way that Stanford teaches you to think and teaches you to pursue is extremely contagious.
You always want to go into something with a plan, with a vision, and you were manifesting this. I mean, you were talking about day one from campus, I'm going to start an early stage venture fund. This is what I'm going to do. You're top of mind for people. When then you're out on the other side, you knew what you wanted to do.
Sometimes you meet founders who have just too many ideas.
Yeah, stay focused. Be really fucking good at one thing.
If I call your mom, your cousin, your best friend, your last girlfriend, I want them all to tell me you've only talked about one problem.
Yep.
Because it tells me that that's the nut you're trying to crack. When I think about the best founders in our portfolio and the best founders I spend time studying, they really just have one problem that they believe they can solve for the world.
All right, I hope everybody's doing well, and welcome to another episode of the Skin in the Game podcast. My name is Saxon Baum, and I'm the managing partner of FLF. Super excited today to have one of my dear friends, Brian Hollins, here. Brian, how are you?
Good, man. Good to see you. Happy to be here.
I got to ask you right off the riff, it's very clear and obvious who you're rooting for this weekend. Tell us the story. Why are you rooting so hard for the New England Patriots this weekend?
My guess is someone will be listening to this podcast after the decision is made, so that they'll sound so smart Monday morning quarterback style. But I can tell you right now, I believe we're going to Santa Clara in about 5 days from now to win yet another game that everyone thinks we're going to lose. Just an unbelievable team. For very quick background, my younger brother is number 13 on the Patriots. He's a wide receiver. His name's Mack Hollins. You've either seen him banging bottles together, screaming Warriors, or you've seen him wearing no shoes. But the moral of the story, he's a culture guy. He's a locker room guy. He's been in the NFL for 9 years now. I've been incredibly proud to follow his journey. And I wasn't wearing, this hat or this sweatshirt even a year ago, but wherever he's playing, I'm rocking it, and very excited for him to be playing in his second Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017 and has had an incredible journey. And this is just another part of that chapter.
That's amazing. Congrats for you and your family. Let's go there. You two are both extremely successful in your own right. What was it like growing up? Where did you guys grow up? Tell me a little bit about your childhood, your parents. Where did this all this success and hard work stem from?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I'll shout out our third too, because it's not just the two of us. But grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. Grew up in Rockville, Maryland. Oldest of three boys. As the oldest, I ran about as far away from home as I could. I went to Stanford for undergrad. But my two younger brothers stayed a little bit closer to home. My middle brother, Mac, walked on in college, didn't get a single offer. It's crazy to be, we opened this story with how he's playing in a Super Bowl, but he didn't get a single offer to play in college. And just another good example of, don't let other people's perception of you stop you from doing the things that you believe you can do. So walked on at Chapel Hill, played at UNC, and then has had a pretty incredible career in the NFL. My youngest brother, Drew, enlisted in the military out of high school. So was in the Marines, served for 4 years in Special Forces. And is also, I like to joke that my middle brother could beat me up, but my youngest brother could kill me. Very, very proud of how big and scary both of them are in their
that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, very, very, very proud oldest brother. I think we all went in different directions, but grew up with a lot of discipline. Mom and dad are pretty blue collar themselves, and um, just really ingrained discipline and fortitude, and understanding the importance of showing up and having respect for those around you, but also having a desire to compete and a desire, to look left and look right and say, I can be better and beat those people even with a smile on my face. And so feel very fortunate to have watched my brothers all kind of go in different directions, but each of us kind of excel in the paths that we chose. And I chose a little bit more of a sort of financially white collar oriented one, but certainly still take a lot of those mindsets and principles with me through the work that I do.
And you were an athlete too growing up, weren't you?
I was a hooper, man. I was a hooper. I was a golfer, and I played lacrosse. So played 3 sports in high school. Tried to walk onto a bunch of teams when I was at Stanford. I'm still a pretty good golfer. I'm not as good as I used to be. But yeah, I've played sports my whole life. I love team orientation. Even in my job today, running a venture capital firm, we have pretty good swag. We got sweaters and hats and
Great swag.
I believe, yeah, we have great swag, but I just believe in that, right? I believe in walking around and repping your team the same way I used to walk around and rep a logo or whatever I was doing. It's a kind of team orientation. We say we, not I at Plaid. It's same mindset.
Let's talk a little bit about Stanford. East Coast boy ends up in Stanford. How did you end up on the West Coast? And how did that drive your career path? Because it wasn't always venture capital and technology.
Yeah. So, my pops actually played football as well. Certainly didn't have the career that Mack had, but I went to Stanford with the goal of being a sports agent. And when I got to Stanford, that's when I realized what a liberal arts school was. So spends zero time trying to figure that out before I got there. But yeah, went to sign up for business classes, and they said, we don't have business classes. I said, what do you mean you don't have business classes? There's a liberal arts. And so really, was forced at Stanford to just kind of venture in different directions and kind of explore, and took the path of international economics. It's kind of a close thing to business, but also, I went to Stanford without a passport. I had never left the country and was super excited about, I met a prince of India and a princess of Russia, and I sort of got exposed to the world when I got to Stanford. It's an incredibly international place. And I said, wouldn't it be cool to go explore and see this big thing? And so studied abroad in Santiago, Chile. Really just started to learn capital markets, got really fascinated with how money moves and how assets are allocated across a portfolio. And so went to Goldman Sachs with the perspective of being a CIO. My goal was to be a CIO someday. And so went into the asset management division with that goal, and got my CFA, became a chartered financial analyst, really spent about 2.5 years traveling down that path, and then got tapped to build a new group at Goldman called the Emerging Entrepreneurs Coverage Group. And
did you stay on the West Coast, or did you move back east after that? So this was all on the West Coast.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the Bay for a decade, so I ended up spending 6.5 years at Goldman. But really, it wasn't until about 3 years in where I got kind of introduced to venture. And happy to talk to you about how that happened. But
let me ask you this, just because we've had a lot of guests from Stanford on the pod, and we've invested in a lot of founders that have gone to Stanford. And it seems like most people sort of find their way there. They find their way into a room, they hear a professor, and there's this unbelievable thought that comes into their mind. We want to do this, we want to do that. And there's this drive that comes out of that university. Did you feel that same way? Was there this epiphany, this speaker that you heard, this teacher that you met, this class that you walked into? Did something like that happen to you there?
I think it was the student body for me, man.
Okay.
I think it was the student body. I think it was the first time I was surrounded by kids who I just said, man, these guys and girls are serious.
This is a different game.
This is a different game. And, and one of the ways you could feel that is, you're in class and then you go home for Thanksgiving, right? And you go back and you see your buddies from high school, and not to knock on my buddies from high school, but just the pace at which the Stanford kids think, and the, I'll put a little bit of it as an edge of entitlement. I mean, just their fundamental belief that they can literally do anything they want in the world is really powerful. And it's contagious.
it's very contagious. I think the way that Stanford teaches you to think and teaches you to pursue is extremely contagious. And if you're surrounded, if 9 out of 10 kids on the basketball court are building something, then, you're probably going to go try it yourself.
Yeah.
I played hoops with the boys who built DoorDash. I drank beers with the boys who built Snapchat. There was just an incredible amount of innovation left and right of me at all times. And I felt very fortunate to sort of absorb some of that and take it on for myself.
It's amazing. It's amazing. No, it's what we've heard from many founders that have gone there, just this contagious feeling and this feeling of confidence.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, go and make it happen. Nobody's going to stop you, which is obviously a rhetoric that has been true throughout your career and your life. So Goldman, you go in asset management, a little bit more of a traditional route, but then really took an interesting turn at Goldman. Talk a little bit about this investment that you made, a big investment, and one of the first investments that Goldman made into a fintech company, right?
Yeah, I sure did. And I'll back up to say also, someone gave me a chance, right? And I really do believe in the power of that as well. A lot of the work that I do today through Collide and through the Takeoff Institute, which is a nonprofit that I started, is about giving people a chance and kind of giving them that first shot. Because I remember mine for sure.
Who was it? Who gave you that shot?
Yeah, her name's Miyuki Matsumoto. So after about 2.5 years at Goldman, I got tapped by a managing director by the name of Miyuki Matsumoto, who came out from the New York office to start her own group. Traditionally, she ran parts of the alternative capital markets team in New York. So she spent a lot of time interfacing with family offices and kind of large clients inside of the bank. And what she started hearing over and over again, this is about 2015, right? So all of this will sound obvious, to those people who are trying to get jobs in 2025. But I think 10 years ago, it wasn't as obvious that banks needed to be thinking this way. And she just noticed that these banks that these family offices were asking constantly for access to earlier stage entrepreneurs, to tech, to Series A and Series B venture capital firms, and the bank wasn't offering it. The bank didn't have a great way for those families to access those groups. And so Miyuki moved out to San Francisco, started her own group. The group was called the Emerging Entrepreneurs Coverage Group. The core thesis was that Goldman does a tremendous job for you when you're ready to raise $100 million and does absolutely nothing for you before that as an early stage entrepreneur. And she tapped me to help her build it. I used to joke that I was at the only startup at Goldman. I was part of a 2-person team for 2.5 years. And 3 or 4 days a week, I got in an Uber and I went to Sand Hill Road. And I met GPs at Benchmark, Bessemer, Lightspeed, Sequoia, NEA. And really my job was to figure out what Series A and B companies they had inside of their portfolios that needed access to Goldman's resources ahead of where Goldman was interested in really spending time with them from a banking or kind of later stage perspective. One of the companies that I was lucky enough to help kind of support was a fintech API business called Plaid. At the time, they were a Series A company with 25 employees in a little shack in San Francisco. And they were really struggling with getting access to Goldman's tech teams. At the time, Lloyd and the firm were in kind of a build instead of buy mindset. We had 30,000 employees. We had 10,000 engineers. And so they just weren't giving a lot of opportunities to companies like Plaid. And we worked to kind of backdoor them into a handful of different groups. They made a ton of progress inside of those groups and then came back to us about 6 months later and said, hey, we've really enjoyed working with you guys. What do you think about Goldman potentially being an investor? And so then we routed them to who eventually became their Series B lead, a team in New York.
Love it.
Run by a couple guys who eventually, I think, wrote a $40 or $50 million check, and the rest is history. And I just learned a ton about the kind of value add component of this job, right? I didn't have a checkbook. And so my job was to think less about whether or not we could write a check and more about how we could add value. And I wear that hat a lot now at Collide. Outside of us just writing checks, what are the ways in which we can deeply create value for our founders?
And another thing, and I want to come back to it when we talk more about Collide, is this whole corporate side, this venture corporate piece that you've been able to really tap with the current firm. But it sounds to me like some of this training and some of these, ways that you've been able to get through the kind of corporate ladder might have come from this work that you did at Goldman.
I think it was recognizing how many companies struggle to navigate Fortune 500,
Yeah.
larger kind of later stage companies, right? And I think I went into our fundraise journey at Collide with that mindset, right? What are some of the ways in which we can create differentiated value for our founders early on using our LP base as that value, right? It's really hard for me with $1 million P&L as a sub $100 million fund to build a platform team to go out and beat A16Z at recruiting, beat first round at platform. It's just really hard. So we said, can we find a way to uniquely utilize the resources of our LP base to instead do that? And so that's what we did. We went out and we built what is today one of the largest Fortune 500 LP backed venture firms in the world. So Alphabet, Amazon, Bank of America, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. We utilize the resources of these organizations, not just as friends and collaboratives, but as, deeply rooted LPs who are rooting for the success of our founders and then subsequently kind of creating access for them across their organizations.
Well, and something that's really core to you and your mission is always different. Having that differentiator, looking different, feeling different, investing in different entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that's such a big part of your story and your success, which we'll come back to. But one thing I was very curious about is, so you have this great career at Stanford, you go to Goldman, this 2-person shop, you guys are making these investments like Plaid, and then you went to business school after that. Is that the case?
I did, yeah.
So, most people would think you already have your career set, top tier institution after top tier institution. A lot of individuals, typically in the finance world, will come to me, hey, should I go to business school? Yeah. And my answer is always, no, you don't have to. Why did you decide to go to business school? What was really that driving factor to make you do that?
Yeah, a couple things. So I wanted to get back to the East Coast. So
okay, there you go.
Let's keep it honest with the audience, right? Let's not.
There you go.
It wasn't all perfect. I had spent a decade in the Bay, and I was ready to get back to the East Coast. So that was a component. The second piece was I wanted to move earlier stage. In my first job with emerging entrepreneurs, I was spending time on Sand Hill Road, and I was meeting early stage founders. I was meeting early stage firms. And I moved to the merchant banking division after that and spent 2.5 years in a group called GS Growth Equity, where we wrote $40 to $75 million checks in companies doing 10 million plus of ARR. And at that stage, I spent most of my time with Series B and Series C stage companies. And I really just knew that I wanted to get back to early stage. So a component of it was making sure that after I was a growth equity investor, I spent a little bit of time learning from early stage investors that weren't Goldman Sachs. The third component was towards the tail end of my time at Goldman, I helped start an organization called Black VC. So I'm one of the founding board members of the organization. We help equip Black investors and up and coming investors with kind of the resources they need to move up and excel inside of the venture capital ecosystem. And through seeing a lot of that work, I also recognized the kind of lack of investors that looked like me who also had access to interesting opportunities, and said to myself, maybe there's an opportunity for me to be one of the allocators. Because going back to what I told you, one of my goals was to be a CIO. Part of the reason I wanted to be a CIO is because I enjoy the allocator seat. I really enjoy thinking about portfolio construction. I really enjoy thinking about diversification across the portfolio. I think I enjoy thinking about capital deployment and LP relations. And so that is a large part of being a GP that is not necessarily a part of just being an investor, sitting as a principal at a venture firm. And so I felt like the components of all of those things set up really nicely with having 2 years in a sandbox. There's not really a lot of time after a 12-hour day at Goldman to think about those things and build the resources necessary to get prepared to start a firm. But I felt like HBS would give me that sandbox. And, speaking with enough people who had gone there, I really felt like that's what I was going to get. And, I went in very intentionally. I think to your point around kind of advice, I certainly spend a lot of time with people who are thinking about going to school. And one of the things I don't say don't go, because I had a great time. I really enjoyed my time. But what I do say is go in with intention. If you go into business school and you say, I'm not sure if I want to do McKinsey or do banking or start a company, I think it's really hard for you to be focused when you get there because there's just too many things going on. When I showed up on day one, every single person on that campus knew that I wanted to start my own venture capital firm. And so when the thing happened in their mind that had a resource associated with supporting someone in building a venture capital firm, they routed it to me. And so I spent both of my years on campus being super pragmatic and focused around building Collide and also finding the right partner so that when I graduated, we were kind of off and running.
Well, it's good advice too. I mean, you always want to go into something with a plan, with a vision, and you were manifesting this. I mean, you were talking about day one from campus, I'm going to start an early stage venture fund. This is what I'm going to do. You're top of mind for people. When then you're out on the other side, you knew what you wanted to do.
It's the same thing as how I feel about like, sometimes you meet founders who have just too many ideas.
Yeah. Stay focused. Be really fucking good at one thing.
If I call your mom, your cousin, your best friend, your last girlfriend, I want them all to tell me you've only talked about one problem.
Yep.
Because it tells me that that's the nut you're trying to crack. And when I think about the best founders in our portfolio and the best founders I spend time studying, they really just have one problem that they believe they can solve for the world. And maybe they go solve that problem and then they get to solve another one. You sort of earn the right to solve another one. But, sometimes there's an element of this kind of whiteboarding nature that I think has been instilled in young entrepreneurs that I think kind of gets them in trouble. And it ends up creating this interdependency where they feel like they can work on so many things, but really they end up working on nothing. And I really encourage our founders to be super focused on, finding a core problem, a core principle that they want to solve. And I think that I saw the benefit of that going into HBS, and it's really been reiterated in how I think about backing founders.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. Throughout my career, there's been so many people that I've worked with, whether as an investor or as a founder, that were always trying to do so many different things. And the one thing that I've always learned is be really good at one thing. Yeah. Dedicate all of your time to solve that one problem, and you're going to be better than anybody else at that. You don't want to be a jack of all trades. That's not typically a winning formula. You want to be really good. It's just like when you invest. I mean, you said it earlier. You're now an early stage investor. You were a later stage investor. Most people are not good at both. Most people are not writing $50 million checks and writing $5 million checks. At least not well. You're spread too thin. It's a different game. And if you want to be really good, you need to be dedicated at one thing. Yeah. All right. So we talked a little bit about Collide, what you're doing now. Give us the whole rundown of the firm. Collide Capital is the firm that you run now. You and your partner, you guys are on fund number 2. Tell us about the firm, what you guys focus on. And I want to go back to, after you tell us about it, a little bit more about the LPs, the strategy that you guys have, and investing in the different types of people that you do.
Yep. So my partner, Aaron Samuels, he was the co-founder and COO of one of the largest Black media companies in the world, a company called Blavity. And we met through a tech conference they built. So they built the largest Black tech conference in the world, which is called Afrotech. We met in 2016. Last year's version was in November. 40,000 people in Houston, Texas. Absolutely incredible ecosystem of all sorts of founders. We came together with a thesis that we sit at some really compelling intersections of the schools that we went to, intersections of the companies that trained us, the organizations that trained us, intersections of the cultural ecosystems that we've built, sort of the media and cultural ecosystems that we sit at. And so we really felt like there was a really compelling intersection of founders that we spent a lot of time with. And we tried to test that out. So before we went out to raise institutional capital, we raised a $1.5 million, what we now call our Fund Zero. So we built.
I didn't realize that. So that was before Fund One.
Yep. So that was when I got to HBS. So kind of my point again around just being super intentional. I showed up to campus. He was still running his company, and we said we're going to raise a little bit of money, and we did it pretty creatively back then. There's still a little bit of this, but I think there was a little more back then. What's known as scout funds. Yep. So the opportunity to kind of invest inside of a venture firm while still kind of being outside of the firm. We took allocations from 4 venture capital firms: Lightspeed Venture Partners, Canaan Partners, Pear VC, and a fund in Boston called Flybridge Capital. And we were lucky enough to have all 4 of those firms kind of support us above the board in saying, you guys can roll this vehicle together. And over the course of my 2 years at school, we made 35 investments and just really learned how to work together. Learned how to write memos, learned how to argue, learned how to stay up late, really just got to kind of date. And again, back to advice around people who are thinking about building a fund, man, is it helpful to know 2 years worth of seeing somebody work before you have to sign on a 15-year commitment with them. And I think a lot of, as I see, as someone that just closed a fund two, a lot of people that I see not even thinking about raising a fund two because of GP split ups.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was because they just didn't spend the time working together before they went off on this journey. So felt very fortunate to build that. And I think also through that work, really figured out where we like to spend our time. So the three kind of buckets that we focus on today are fintech infrastructure, supply chain and logistics businesses. And then we built a thesis around Gen Z in the workforce. So what tools will Gen Z use when they become the majority of workers as opposed to millennials? Engagement tools, productivity tools, retention tools. What will the enterprise adopt when Gen Z is kind of the purchaser and the majority of the workforce over the next 5 to 10 years? So we focus pre-seed to Series A in those kind of three main buckets. We closed a $66 million fund one in 2022, and closed our fund two, closing it here kind of shortly. Should announce it in a couple months, but super excited to kind of get to keep doing the work.
Outside of those three categories, when you look at you two, do you guys spend time on all three categories, or do you guys split up those categories between the two of you?
We spend time pretty evenly.
Yeah.
And I think what we've also learned is that our deal flow ecosystem, some of the deals that he sees, I might be more interested in, and vice versa. We now have two principals on the team as well, Elias and Andrew, who are helping us kind of source across these ecosystems. So, we spend a lot more time worrying about founder profile, revenue and momentum inside of the business, some of the kind of key economics as opposed to which category they fall into. We don't have anything that says we need to be 33% into those three buckets. But I think we've both started to build a little bit of affinity towards buckets where we just have good domain behavior of understanding what's interesting and seeing enough pattern recognition inside of those buckets. But, no specific mandate that either of us has to follow.
So let's talk about your LP base in the world of venture capital. And you and I have talked extensively about this. It's not easy to get major institutions to write checks to fund one and fund two.
Yeah.
You guys from inception were able to get institutional investors to invest in your funds. Let's talk about that. How were you able to do that? What was that core differentiator that got these institutional investors to say, you know what, I'm going to take that leap. I'm going to write a check when that track record wasn't even there?
Yeah. I'll point to a few things. One, there was a little bit of track record there. So for a fund one, having this fund zero was super valuable.
Because of the fund zero, that's right.
It's 0.5x DPI, so we've returned half of it. We have 14 markups in a portfolio of 35 companies. It sits a little over 2.4x net TVPI. So we showed a ton of momentum in a 2-year period that I think helped us get access to some of those institutional folks. So I'll put that as one component. The second component is I think we did the right work in those 2 years. So I think a lot of GPs put the deck together and then immediately try to go meet Harvard, or put the deck together and immediately try to go meet Accolade. And my word of caution to them is that, one, the line is around the corner for those folks. But two, they're in such a long-term mindset when you're meeting them that what you think is like a tryout to them is like a first date. And they really are not in those first 3 to 5 meetings deciding whether or not to invest in you. They're deciding whether they like you. They're deciding whether you have a whether you have a perspective that's even compelling or interesting, or frankly, any different than the other 16 managers they already have in their portfolio, or the 260 that are in their CRM that they've known for 3 years. And so I really encourage young GPs to just really try. I know it's hard because you're trying to raise and you want to get going and all that, but to just really take your time in meeting those folks. Because if you want to close fast, go close family offices, go close high net worths. If you want to close institutional steady capital that will be with you for multiple funds, go line up to these guys and spend the time getting to know them. And so I think that's the kind of the second component, that we took the right time and took the right approach to them. The third component is I think we built an institutional grade back office from day one. I think a lot of managers do not take the time to set up institutional grade back office, to set up the data room, to set up the PPM, to do all the things that don't look like shortcut. And, I'm not going to call out any systems, but I think that there are, I'm going to raise a $10 to $15 million fund and see how it goes systems. And then there's, I'm going to raise 50 to 200 and my plan is to do this for the rest of my life systems. And those systems are 2 to 4x more expensive. And it means you're going to make less money as your salary and all those things. But I think that LPs can sniff out the difference between people who are setting up to build a firm versus people who are setting up to build a fund.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. How were you even able to get meetings with some of these people? I mean, how were you able to get in the door?
Banging on doors, baby.
That's literally banging on doors.
Yeah, I've told this story before, so it's not private, but our largest investor is the University of California Endowment System, a group called the UC Regents. I cold emailed the CIO of the UC Regents, and I also cold emailed 75 other CIOs.
Of course,
who didn't respond.
you got one response, but that was the one.
But I got one, and they've showed up as incredible partners. Shout out to Jagdeep and Steve Sturman and the whole team at the UC Regents who believed in us at Fund 1, continued to believe in us in Fund 2. And, and there's another guy that I'll shout out named Jimmy Castro, who's at the UC Regents, who doesn't sit on the investing side, but sits on the ops side and came in on day one and beat the crap out of our back office and really made us institutionalize and build cybersecurity policies and build IT training and build things that I know venture firms that are on Fund 4 and Fund 5 and still don't have. But he's helped us really think about institutionalizing and bringing those things in. And so, very, very proud of just kind of the outbound work that we did to get in front of a lot of these groups, but then also the maintenance. I think if you talk to other GPs, they'd attest that they see me in air and everywhere. We get on planes, we get on trains, we get in cars. We try our best to be out in front of the ecosystem, not just LPs, but founders as well, to show that, we care about doing this work. We're not just cutting checks.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, you obviously have had an illustrious career through all the major institutions. How much of venture capital is about network and who you know and just showing up and doing the right thing? Because I always talk about, I don't have that background of, Stanford and Harvard. I'm Pittsburgh, Miami of Ohio, but I show up.
Hey, and you're doing just fine. I'm on your podcast, not the other way around. Right? So you're doing something right. It's got to be a big piece of it. I don't know if it's 40 or 80. I think you could argue about that, but I do believe that we are representing the exact thing we're trying to back. I could have gone to sit at 5 different venture firms, probably made 4 to 5x what I make today as a GP. Also, by the way, for those of you out there listening, you do not make a lot of money as a GP, despite some of the things you might be told. You make a lot of money in year 12 when you start hitting carry, but the salary of a GP, let me tell you, you could go get an SDR role and be doing a lot better.
That is very welcome to the game of venture capital.
The early days of building a venture firm are very similar to building a company, and we took that long-term approach of saying, we know that if we want to do this for 25 to 30 years, the best day to start is today. And we can start small and we can start, scrappy. But if we do the right things, founders will understand the journey that we're on and they'll want to be a part of that journey with us. And we've now backed 75 companies over the course of about 6 years. And I believe a lot of those super competitive rounds that we've been able to win and outcompete venture firms that have been around for a while is because those founders wanted to work with people who, like them, are scared shitless to wake up on Monday morning because they know that their job's not guaranteed.
100%. I mean, it's the same, me being an operator and then getting into the venture capital seat. It's not like I went and worked for Sequoia or Andreessen. We went to build our own firm. It's very similar. Building your own firm, it's building a startup. I mean, it's very similar. It's what we love to do. Your career has been, very much so driven by differentiators and being different and investing in different types of people. You talked about the Black community and everything that you do for that community. Talk a little bit about investing in the Black community, what you're doing there, any initiatives that you've got going right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I talked a little bit about Black VC, another organization that's near and dear to my heart. It's called the Takeoff Institute. At the Takeoff Institute, we equip Black undergrads with the resources they need to get prepared for their young professional journey. So we meet them in their sophomore or junior year and kind of teach them the things that you need to be successful in the real world that you're not learning on campus. How to have a boss for the first time, how to build a budget to pay back your loans, how to think about building a network, how to think about career exploration. We built a partnership with the Wall Street Prep, so our students go through Excel and PowerPoint tutorials because those are the two tools you're going to use most on the job. How to think about negotiation leverage when when you get that first job offer. So we just teach them a lot of the things that I think help you be prepared when you get to the real world. Started that organization in 2020. We've graduated 350 fellows now. We have fellows at Goldman, Apple, Tesla, Spotify, Morgan Stanley. It's been incredible to see them kind of go off. And, really the thing I take away from it is just how easy. It was kind of something we talked about a little bit earlier around people giving you a shot, but how just a little bit of confidence in someone can go a really long way. And how if you, regardless of whether they're at community college or Stanford, if you can give someone the belief that they can get a job at Tesla and they go and apply and they get that job at Tesla, you've now unlocked 30 years of a career where they will go bang down doors and jump over walls because they're just not afraid of any opportunity that's put in front of them. And to me, that's one of the most rewarding components of the work that we do is we take people who are already super capable, but we supercharge them. We talk about giving them fuel, Takeoff Institute. So we put a little extra fuel in their rockets and send them off. And it's been super rewarding.
I love that.
On the Collide side, we don't have a diversity mandate. We feel very fortunate to be able to say that, over 80% of the founders we've backed are Black, brown, and female-led teams. A lot of that comes from just the intersections of the ecosystems that we spend time in. But we very intentionally didn't put a mandate around the work that we do because, like the real world, we don't want our founders to think that we gave them money for some reason other than the fact that they were going to give us a lot more of it back. And, we are a returns-oriented fund and firm and continue to be that way. And it's fun to see, what's percolating inside of the portfolio, white founders, Black founders, Asian founders. We have all sorts of mixes. And so, time will tell who will be our top performers, but we're very proud to do the work that we're doing without kind of anyone telling us who we have to give it to.
Well, Brian, I'm proud to call you a friend. I appreciate your time today. I know our audience will love your story. If you guys enjoyed today's podcast, go and follow us. Go throw us a like or a subscribe on YouTube and go Pats. It's hard for me to say that as a Steelers fan, but I have to do it for you.
You only got to say it for another 6 days. And like I said, I hope I'm listening to this episode after the game and telling you that these colors were the right ones for me to be wearing today. But go Pats is right.
Appreciate you, Brian. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.